Okay, I decided to skip the counter.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Yeah. Hey, so
How you doing?
good. How are you?
Good. Let me just figure this out. I've never been on this kind of a,
On StreamYard before?
yeah, never been,
I thought I
yeah.
saw you on StreamYard before.
Well, maybe when I was on the TLC or something. Yeah, but how are you?
Good. People keep on telling me I need to talk to you. I don't know why.
I have no idea why either. I'm a physicalist atheist, right? Former Christian, and
Atheist.
I'm a retired science and math teacher, so I don't know. I just when you're retired, you have to keep your mind active, and I like to just kind of hang out, and
What
hopefully
grade
we can.
did you teach?
I taught high school and middle school, so
Okay, and so you taught like the full gamut, algebra.
mostly middle school math and high school and middle school science. So
Okay.
earth science, biology, physics, chemistry. Um,
So you have a
stuff like
teaching credential.
yes. Hmm.
What did you get your bachelor's degree in?
I got my undergrad in. I had a double major, like in biology and business,
Oh
and then
wow.
I went on and got a business degree,
Okay.
and then I worked in business for a long time, and yeah, so that's kind of how I wound up. And I'm interested in um, TLC because I really don't understand um, what it's all about. Um,
Well,
maybe it's like Seinfeld. It's a show about nothing. Um, uh,
um,
maybe that's what it is. But I'm trying to kind of.
did you have you watched so Brett Weinstein and Richard Dawkins?
Right.
They
I haven't. I
spoke
haven't seen. I haven't seen their interactions recently.
a long time ago. This may have been 4 or 5 years ago. They spoke in Chicago.
Right.
And one of the interesting things that Brett Weinstein said, which I think really gave Dawkins some pause, was he said religion is the extended phenotype of humanity.
Um. Yeah, I'm sure that religion has some, probably some adaptive value in. Um, uh, yeah, I think religion definitely has some adaptive value. The problem is, should we believe things for pragmatic reasons because it has adaptive value?
So
Yeah.
that was the essence of the debates that Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson had about 4 or 5 years ago. Uh,
Hmm.
they spent many hours debating this,
Right.
and I think those debates were the kernel around which a lot of what's now called TLC, I actually prefer the Jordan Peterson sphere, grew up around. So to explain
Right.
how I ended up here,
Right.
um, Mark says he really digs your shirt, and I agree. Uh, um,
That's why I wore
so what happened was I come from, well, my parents didn't raise me religious. I've always been far more religious than my parents thought I should be.
Right.
And I came to a point in my life where I decided the religious lifestyle wasn't something I was going to live in.
Right.
Partially because I was having mental health issues.
Right. I'm sorry to hear that.
Happens. And so what happened was I got involved in Jordan Peterson stuff, just in terms of psychology and mental health.
Right.
And I ended up being surrounded by a lot of people, and we used to have a lot more atheists. And to some extent, people are still trying to keep our atheists because we want that diversity of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was a lot of people, this is what Vervaeke's going through, which is he wanted a religion that's not a religion. He wanted the adaptive value of religion without all of the things that he found objectionable.
Right.
And the problem, I would say, with a religion that's not a religion is you can't have an A that's not an A, right? That's like,
right.
Right. A is A, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's how this whole thing happened. We talk about a lot of different stuff, but ultimately, it's people. Have you heard of Neoplatonism? Are you familiar with Neoplatonism?
Somewhat. I think the problem I have with philosophy in general, with few exceptions, is that apart from certain subdisciplines like logic, mathematical logic, maybe epistemology, it's a very mixed bag of people just speculating, armchair speculation about the nature of reality. And I as I think about it, I tend to agree more with people like Alec Rosenberg, who say that really a scientific approach is what we really need, because there's endless ink and forests of paper on these topics, ontology, the science of being, first principles, and nothing seems to ever get resolved. I would say that from my perspective on religion, I'm an evidentialist. So I would have to see evidence that there is some purpose to the universe. The universe is an artifact, and that that we can make sense of the world by just thinking about it. I don't see that as a very productive, and for me, it leads to a lot of and this is one of the objections I have with the whole TLC project, is I think it leads to very sloppy thinking. And I live in the state of Utah, which is a great place to live, but I see a lot of people who are in the LDS church, and they have these very sloppy ways of thinking. And I suppose some people would call it right brain thinking. And they make huge errors in judgment with financial matters, with just, goofy ideas about, God's telling me this, or the Holy Ghost is leading me this way or that way. And I just think it's corrupting.
What do you think of string theory?
Well, I don't know that. I don't, that's another thing that's great that I don't object to with like Christian apologetics, or I don't know enough about it to say much about it. All I can say is that, like it or not, our ontology has to be based upon something besides some guy speculating about it in a cave somewhere.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that, well, I'll give you an example. Right now I'm reading a book because Paul Vanderklay was touting it for a while. It's called They Flew. And it's about these monks and nuns, almost all Roman Catholics, who are levitating off the ground and flying around and flying into the treetops and flying onto the top of the church and doing all these things. And there are hundreds of eyewitness testimonies to these quote events. Now, the author points out this is common these types of reports happen in Buddhism, Hinduism. As Paul would say, there's a religion of India that we call Hinduism. And this is to the credit of Judaism, not in Judaism. Okay.
There's more of it than you might believe.
Not. I'm going by what the guy said in the book. But I don't believe these things. I don't care who writes something about them.
Right.
I really don't care. I think it's ridiculous. But Paul and company and the TLC, they would introduce these kinds of, witches. Maybe witches are real. Maybe hobgoblins are real. Maybe, And I think it's a retreat from reason and logic. It's kind of a failure of nerve. There's an essay by Sidney Hook that I have read. It's called the New Failure of Nerve. People get to a point, they go, I don't feel good about this. I'm kind of scared, and then they just go into mysticism. They just give up.
Well, I mean, I totally agree with you. It's just, for me, and when I first heard this, I went to a friend of mine who has a master's in physics from MIT to ask if it's actually true, because I didn't believe it.
What's true?
We have no empirical evidence of string theory.
Right. It's a hypothetical explanation for what the phenomena are. Yeah, it's not even a theory. It's a hypothesis. It's not a theory.
Well, it's not even a hypothesis, because a hypothesis requires at least according to Popper, requires that it be falsifiable.
Right. Well, that's true. It could be completely wrong.
So isn't that a retreat from logic? I mean, isn't that a bunch of people sitting around?
I would prefer for me, and I'm not a philosopher of science, and I'm certainly not a philosopher of physics. You can get other people on that are much more qualified to speak on this than me. But science is the fallible pursuit of knowledge with the best methods we have. And obviously there'll be dead ends. I mean, Newtonian physics kind of hit a dead end when it came to the ultraviolet catastrophe and the orbits of electrons and the perturbation of perihelion of Mercury. So yeah, we're doing the best we can, but since if you want to take science, modern science from Galileo onward, we've only been working at this for a couple of centuries.
I don't think that's true.
And well, I'm talking about modern science. I'm ancient science, as you know, was at least in the West, was short-circuited with the collapse of the Roman Empire and the.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we've definitely, and this is why I keep on going back to Neoplatonism. Like, you haven't said anything I disagree with yet, right?
Right.
I think that we need to always, and I mean, around here, I'm constantly quoting note 4 from Halachic Man, where he says religion has to um, ground itself in science, or otherwise it will bring destruction to the entire created order. Right? Well,
Look, if that's all TLC was, and that's what that was what the overwhelming majority of folks in it thought, I'd say that's great.
I don't know if that's.
I don't have any objection. I see a place for religion, but
right.
I think you have to be very careful. Your background's Judaism, right?
Correct.
I mean, look, you know the history of persecution and destruction of the Jewish people by people that said, "Hey, you guys are of the devil," and all this other crap from the Middle Ages. So I would think you'd be very sensitive to that. I would. I just this whole talk of witches, demons, egregores, all this bizarro stuff. I don't really.
I just don't see how
it's a little spooky.
Well, yeah, it is spooky, but the edges of human knowledge always are. I don't distinguish between string theory and Pajot talking about witches and egregores.
Well, I understand that, but I'm just saying string theory, nobody's going to come and burn you at the stake for string theory.
The history of the 20th century is people murdering people because of their atheism. And I'm not saying all atheists are murderers, but.
Well, I don't think Hitler was an atheist. I don't think Hitler was an atheist, and so
100%. I mean, what is absolutely clear is that Mao's revolution and Stalin very clearly, in the name of atheism, murdered people.
Well, I understand that. I would say more in the name of communism. In other words, to create a classless society, we have to destroy this corruption. Do I think communism was a quasi-religious movement?
I agree with you.
It was quasi-religious. It had holy texts. It had a cult of personality.
I agree with you.
Stalin, Pol Pot, Mao. So it's the same kind of thing.
We're not disagreeing. We're not disagreeing at all.
Yeah.
And eugenics. I mean, eugenicists. I mean, let's face it. The Nazis were eugenicists, and they claimed. And I'm not saying that that they were right in calling it Darwinism, but they did call it Darwinism, right?
Right.
So that I find it kind of strange that you would say that. Yes, some religious, and that's definitely happened, where religious thinking has hello, all these people who are saying hi, where, religion has definitely at times gone into what I would just call demonic, And I think that's part of what a lot of people in this little corner are actually worried about when they talk about woke or critical race theory. Or, I mean, when you look at the supposed atheists and what they're doing in our universities, I'm guessing you agree that they've lost their minds.
Well, yeah, I believe in freedom of speech. Yeah, I'm pretty much a free speech absolutist, because I think that through argument and dialogue, and that's the only way we're going to advance ourselves as mankind or womankind or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against that, and I think that I would say that what we need is more reason and logic,
I agree.
not less.
I
Okay,
agree.
so critical race theory has certain tenets, I believe. Those tenets, if they can be put in operational form, can be tested,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So if they fail the test, then they're not true. So I would say that you need more arguments, not less, um, and or more logic and reason. And retreating into witches and demons and egregores or whatever you want to call them is not going to help. What it's going to do is it's going to polarize people even more, because when you see your opponent as being possessed by an egregore or some disembodied evil force,
Mm-hmm.
you're more likely to kill them.
I actually disagree with that. That's the first thing you've said I've disagreed. I think if you see your opponent as being possessed by something that is external to them, you are more likely to actually recognize that there's a human being there that may be freed from the spirit. And I think that's part of what is useful in religion, is allowing for conversion, right? When you allow for conversion, when you allow, because if you don't have this idea of, oh, there's an idea, there's a memeplex, there's an agregore, there's a spirit that is possessing this person, right? Then it's just that person, and the only way to fix it is to kill them.
What do you I mean, what benefits? What is the benefit of just saying they have bad ideas and they need help to see that their ideas are wrong,
First of
instead
all,
of saying they're possessed by a spirit or some crazy thing like that? I think that adds nothing.
I don't know that those two things are as distinct as you make it, but I think that what happens is we do have an imaginary. We do have, like. Have you ever seen that list of human universals? Uh,
From whom?
um, I thought it was Steven Pinker, who went through and looked at concepts that we've seen in every human
Yeah,
situation.
I'm not familiar
And
with that.
one of them is magic.
Right.
Um, and I mean, the fact is, people really do need. Have you noticed how much people who claim to be atheists will be into like constellations? What's your sign? That type of thing.
I'm sure there's some people like that. I don't know any of them, but
I'm surprised.
I'm sure. Look,
Yeah.
people are 98.6% chimp. don't reason very well.
I
They
agree.
don't reason very well. It's a big problem. There's a lot of cognitive biases and cognitive frailty with human beings. But the answer is not mysticism. Okay,
How do
it's
you know
not, because
that? But
you're
T Grog, no. My question is that a falsifiable belief of yours that we could actually look at? Okay, let's look in human history, and has taking away the idea that people can be possessed by spirits, has that actually ended up causing more harm or causing more good? Is that something you would be open to anthropological, empirical?
well, yeah, I'm not sure how you test that because it's very difficult. You can't rerun history.
Epidemiological. So this is one of the things I'm really big on. Uh, we have we can do all kinds of epidemiological studies on history, right? You can take a look at different societies, and now with all the information we have of ways people have died, um, the fact is anthropology, and this is one of the things that bothers me the most. People think hard science, there we need to actually be very empirical. And then when we get into the social sciences, they're willing to be far less empirical, which bothers me as somebody who's always been in the social sciences to no end. And then when we get into the humanities, which actually I would say is the most important thing, right? Which is, for example, I think when we talk about beauty, right? Like you can we can have actual measures, quantitative measures of this is popular. This is what a large percentage of humanity thinks is beautiful, right? And so I would actually say I think I am more of an empiricist than you are.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I would say that the problem with anthropological studies are, in any studies with human beings, it's very difficult to control for the factors involved. I'm sure that I believe that evolutionary psychologists have looked at beauty and it equates it with symmetry and this and that. I'm sure there's metrics that's outside of my purview.
Biological
Okay,
fitness.
yeah, it's out of it's. I don't, unlike some folks in the TLC. I don't claim to know things that I don't know.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
I what I would say is that people don't. So let's take an example. Do you think people are evolved creatures or were they created by God
I believe they were
directly?
created by God, but I don't believe that's somehow separate from human beings evolving.
You don't believe, so you believe human beings did evolve.
Yes.
Okay. So there's one thing where some people, you probably lose some people right there. But from my perspective, um, human beings, as far as what we're doing in the 21st century, uh, this is a very new environment for us. Okay, for 200,000 years, people lived in small groups in the savannas of Africa or the grasslands of Eurasia or wherever the hell they lived, and they just kind of lived and died and lived and died and lived and died and lived and died, generation after generation after generation. And now we have a modern world, we have modern science, but our brains are still back in the Stone Age. Um, we don't think very well about a lot of things. And this is why we need science, because people make up all sorts of crazy stuff. Most things are false.
Correct.
Most.
Yeah.
So to ascertain what's true and what's not true, we've tried holy books. We've tried the Vedas, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the surahs of Islam. We've tried all these things, and they don't really tell us anything about.
No, that's false.
They don't what?
That's false. They tell us a lot.
What do they tell us?
So wisdom, all of these old literature, they tend to have a lot of wisdom about how humans interact with each other, what are successful strategies to interact with other people. Wisdom, like ancient wisdom, this goes back to the idea of being extended phenotype, right? I'm really surprised you haven't spent more time with Brett Weinstein. I mean, he and his wife, they're both evolutionary biologists, and they wrote a book about this. They say that cultural evolution is actually a faster way of evolving than genetic evolution.
Well,
and that's why it's so good.
I understand that.
Yeah.
However, since I'm a physicalist, you have to always go back. The culture supervenes on the material.
Right.
With no people, there's no culture. With no people, there's no ideas, there's no wisdom, there's no books, there's none of that stuff.
You're
So you have to go back
nominalism.
right here into the human mind.
Yes.
And the human mind is still rooted in largely the primitive past.
Right.
Um,
you're just expressing nominalism.
I am kind of a nominalist, I think.
Yeah. You are. I mean, yeah. And well, I hope you're aware that postmodernism is post-nominalism. So most of our universities have been in a way captured by critiques of nominalism.
Well, I understand that, but I like I said, I don't read a lot of philosophy because I think a lot of it is absurd. And postmodernism, I think, is more absurd than most. So I don't spend a lot of time reading it because it doesn't make it makes no sense. I mean, it clearly denies things that are true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Science doesn't make progress. Everything is like up for grabs and all this crazy stuff. That's clearly absurd. So I don't think but that's the problem with philosophy in general. It's just a problem.
No, that's not a problem with philosophy. That's a problem with postmodernism. That's like me saying it's a problem with science. Like bad philosophy is bad philosophy, just like bad science is bad science.
Well, yeah, I understand that. I would tend to agree with you on that. But look, postmodernism is no worse than Hegel. Postmodernism is no worse than Heidegger.
I would tend to disagree with you, but I'm just wondering in terms of relevance realization, right? You're right now you're talking about the problems with this little corner or the Jordan Peterson sphere, but it's not like we people who are having these discussions are like running Harvard, Yale, and Stanford. Whereas post-nominalism has overtaken American universities as a whole, including MIT, to my surprise.
Well, yeah, that's a disaster. I don't think that's happened in China. I don't think that's happened in other countries. It seems to be a Western disease.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I would say that, you could look for causes. this may sound shocking, but I think that some of it has to do with just a deterioration in the human gene pool. I think that a lot of we're accumulating bad mutations all the time, and so we see a lot of problems with
I'm not
people.
aware that's actually a as far as I know, the Flynn effect. Our IQs have been going up.
Well, there, and certainly I'm not an expert on this, but would you say that 100,000 years ago, natural selection was highly salient to human beings?
Correct.
100,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't hear you.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. How about 400 years ago?
Much less so.
My recollection is that in the 17th or the 18th century, less than 50% of children lived to the age of 6.
Right.
That is a high selection pressure.
What do you think is better as a selection pressure? Artificial selection or natural selection?
Well, when you say better, what do you mean better?
Well,
in order
artificial selection, I think is more competent in selecting out bad, undesirable characteristics than natural selection.
Well, yes, of course. For example, let's take horse breeding,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Horse breeders or dog breeding.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, I don't know what kind of, where that leads, but to me, it makes sense that when and I think Darwin said something about this, when you reduce the selection pressure, you will accumulate more and more deleterious mutations. For example, I have asthma.
Right.
300 years ago, I'd be dead.
Right. But
I pass those I pass those genes on to my children.
Yes.
Okay. I wouldn't have survived childhood. There's no way. I had a lot of tremendous medical problems when I was a young kid.
But
So,
you do realize that we are partaking in artificial selection like never before.
well,
Human artificial selection, including now with birth control. I mean, but also genetic testing. The level of artificial selection on the human population, especially in the West, in many Western countries.
Well, I think there is selection.
Down syndrome.
Yeah, I think there is selection, but it's mostly due to abortion, things like that. Yeah. But getting back to philosophy and nominalism and whatnot, I would just say that we're kind of in a cul-de-sac. We've made a deal like Faust, and science is the only way forward. We have no other way forward. Going back to mysticism and magic is not going to help us. It's going to be a disaster.
I think, I mean, as far as relevance realization, I think you're completely focusing on something that is obviously less problematic than everything else we've talked about right now.
Instead of relevance realization, why don't you just say how I rank order something as important?
How I
because
priority ranking, I think you have a very poor ranking of priorities.
Well, that's your opinion. So what do you think? What do you think's wrong with my ranking of priorities?
I think that bad ideas overtaking MIT as an institution is far more hazardous to our society than what you think is happening here.
So you think that they should have courses in demonology at MIT and that would solve
I
it?
would prefer that to courses on Foucault.
Well, yeah, Foucault's an idiot. I understand that.
So,
but the point is, and there have been many, there have been the major critiques, not from Jordan Peterson, by the way, have been by scientists against Foucault and all these postmodernists, Levitt and Gross. I have the book. I don't see Jordan doing much about it. I don't see,
completely
and I don't see introducing these fuzzy, esoteric concepts into the discourse as doing anything about it either. As a matter of fact, I think it feeds into Foucault and these other people. It reinforces what they say.
Now we are disagreeing about questions of fact, right? Whether Jordan Peterson's actual effect on, and I could name other people, most of whom are actually atheists. So Gad Saad also is an atheist. Weinstein is an atheist. Vervaeke is an atheist. The people who are involved in what some used to be called the intellectual dark web, then now we're calling it Jordan Peterson sphere. Like there is actual measurable effect to the political and on college campuses. I mean, Chris Rufo has been actually getting people fired at Harvard and UPenn. So, I mean, I think you're just arguing against verifiable facts.
Well, fired for what?
Fired for CRT, critical race theory. And DEI.
Well, I do have a problem because I do think that people at universities, should have tenure and they should be able to teach what they want. However, that if their ideas are shitty, they should be debated. They should be seriously debated.
Well,
and I don't see. I don't think firing people is the right way to go. I think showing that their ideas are wrong and demonstrating how stupid this stuff is and how foolish it is.
We're not talking about removing them from faculty. We're talking about removing them from administrative positions.
Oh, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
But look, we have a disease. The disease is irrationalism from the postmodernist, in my humble opinion, not being an expert on postmodernism, okay? But so to combat irrationalism, you don't need more irrationalism. You need
How do you know that?
Reason.
How do you know that? No.
Because I don't see any other way forward.
Well, okay.
I could be wrong.
No, hold on. We can A/B test here, right? Is the way to, and this is what the replacement theory, which Michael Schellenberger has been talking about, right? And Dawkins and Ayaan Hirsi is that the West is being taken over with these irrational ideas because, as Paul would quote from the Christian scriptures, you empty a house of one spirit, leave nothing in, and 7 worse come back in. That is what we are seeing.
Well, obviously, the decline of a civilization is complex, and many people have written about what the causes might be. So it's, I feel comfortable defending what has evidence behind it.
I agree 100%.
I feel very comfortable with that. If the postmodernists don't like it, well, so much the worse for them. I think that the way forward, if there is a way forward, is not to slip into untestable, unverifiable, magical thinking. And I think that that's the problem I have with with TLC. It's vague, it's amorphous, and people hear these concepts. We just had a murder case here recently in Utah.
Mhm.
And this fellow, Chad Daybell, convinced people that these children were inhabited by demons. So they killed them.
Right.
So he killed his wife. He killed his children. Lori Daybell killed her husband because he had a dark spirit. See? So,
I mean, you're talking to somebody. I mean, right now I'm getting my master's in social work because I want to become a clinical social worker.
Right. Well, that's cool.
And we're agreeing 95% of the way.
Yep, because I think you're a smart guy. That's why.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I just don't see. I think you're not actually applying the scientific method in social science the way you would in hard sciences, which is what I am very, very concerned about. In social studies, in the question of how does one community function better than another, right? We can take a look. Oh, look, Utah. There's a bunch of Mormons, and we can see in Massachusetts. There's a lot of people who don't believe in any religion, or they're Unitarian Universalists, which is basically the same thing, or Japan, and we can actually look at the differences in these societies, and actually say, hey, it looks like there is an effect of these beliefs which people have, which we should take seriously. And you don't seem to be doing that.
So what beliefs would you advocate that people have?
Judaism.
Okay. So what evidence do you have that Judaism is true?
The survival of the Jewish people over thousands of years in adverse conditions.
Okay. So that is evidence of something. I prefer to say it's an evidence of strong group cohesiveness in the face of persecution.
Okay. So
and the religion facilitates that.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean it's literally true.
Okay, that's okay. So
it's not literally true.
I understand. So when we say something is true, there's a reason you said it doesn't mean it's literally true. It does mean it's true. Something can be true in that it hits the mark, right?
And by the way, Judaism has survived, as far as we know, for a very small proportion of human history.
Correct.
Okay? Very small.
Correct.
So we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of years here. Okay. So the judgment is not in, and I hope Judaism survives forever. But we can't let present circumstances.
Correct.
Well, do you think that that's because an all-knowing God has kept you guys alive? Is that why you guys have survived?
So I make a very strong distinction between things I believe because of empirical evidence, and things I believe because of they are handed down from my religious. So the dual magisteria. There's that which religion teaches, and there's that which we can verify through the scientific method. And I think that you should never walk outside of that which you can know scientifically.
That's
that
good.
is a structure. I'm quoting the greatest rabbis who are accepted today. And this is what Neoplatonism generally thought of science as it has existed for thousands of years. Now, science has improved. I'm very glad science has improved. But the idea, the Neoplatonic idea, which John Vervaeke very much pushes, is, okay, we have fonts of wisdom, we have the scientific method, and what we should do is because scientific method does not generate enough information. You didn't scientifically choose to wear that shirt, right? Scientifically, and this is not a new argument. I mean,
it's a preference, right?
It's a right, and prioritization. So what Jung would call theology is a system of priorities. That's what Carl Jung said theology is. And that's what Jordan Peterson says theology is a system of preferences. And what Hume said, I mean, he's the one who explained it, but it's much older than him, is you cannot derive an ought from an is. When we talk about religion, we're talking about oughts. And you can't derive your oughts from what is. I mean, honestly, you sound like you're having the debates we all had in this little corner about 5 years ago.
Yeah, okay. I would just say this. So are there oughts in the Holy Scriptures that you would say are not applicable now?
Not applicable?
Yes.
Okay. So I have to say, when we get to, I am very, very tired, let's say, of people who will say things like, oh, your Bible condones slavery. It's like, no, my Bible doesn't condone slavery. Please don't tell me what my Bible tells me. And where are you standing when you say that slavery is wrong? Where did you get this idea that slavery is wrong?
Well, it's really more of an internal critique, because if you believe that these words are written by an all-powerful, all-loving, all-knowing God,
yes,
and then it contains moral incongruities or bizarro statements.
That's a Christian
problem.
It
goes back to the credibility of this purported being.
Correct, but that's
and what so
that's not a Jewish problem. That's a Christian problem. You guys, so Christianity has this problem of they have a New Testament, right? We don't have that problem in Judaism because our Bible is our Bible, right? And if I reject my Bible, and if I did reject my Bible, if I believed something, if there was something in my Bible that I thought, hey, my Bible teaches X, and I believe X is false, yeah, I would reject my Bible. I would. But I don't reject my Bible, and I don't have this problem that Christians have of Old Testament, New Testament.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about, let's forget the New Testament. I'm not a Christian.
Yeah.
Are there things in the Hebrew scriptures. I prefer to use that instead of the Old Testament.
So do I.
But are there things in the Hebrew scriptures that are
Immoral?
yes, immoral, unethical?
I do not believe there's anything that's immoral or unethical in my scriptures. No.
So do you think when the priest's daughter is accused of not being a virgin and they don't produce a blood-stained sheet, that she should be burned?
T Grog, you can't see, this is what I get really tired of. So
Because people ask pointed questions?
Ever been a society, and you can look at the history of Hebrew society, we have never ever been a society that puts people to death for such things. It has never in the history of, and 2,000 years ago, these things were not interpreted the way you're interpreting them now.
Well, I can't speak to that. That's a very broad statement, though. And what you're saying is, you seem to be saying, is that you have evidence that this was never done. Never.
Well,
I don't see how you can make a claim like that. Never is a big word. That's a big word.
There is no evidence that it was ever done, and plenty of evidence that in Jewish, for example, in the book of John, when is it I believe it's Pilate who says, "Go kill them," the Sanhedrin says, "It is not in our law to kill any man." This was 2,000 years ago. And the Talmud says something very similar.
Well, I understand that. This is
scriptures. So no, we never
yeah,
like.
I'm talking about
religion.
I'm talking about the book of Leviticus, right?
I understand that.
Okay, not the Sanhedrin in the first century. This is the book of Leviticus. This is a long time before that. So what you're telling me, what you seem to be telling me, is these commandments were ignored.
No.
Were reinterpreted, never followed up on.
Were understood. Always understood very differently than how you are interpreting them to me now.
They were understood differently. So can you give me some literature or citations on that? You can send them to me. You can email them to me.
There's plenty.
Because I'm an evidence-based guy, and with all due respect, I'm not a Hebrew scholar, neither are you. So I want to see evidence that that's true.
Okay.
Although to me, it'd be very hard to prove a universal negative that was never done, even though it seems to be clearly commanded.
No. But generally what we know of, and there's been plenty of archaeology, as you know, in the Middle East, and Middle East, it is quite clear that in the past 2,000 years, Jews have never Judaism has not interpreted itself the way you're interpreting it.
Well, I don't know how complete, because I don't know how complete the record is. So I don't know exactly. But if you'll send me some literature, I'll be happy to look at it.
There's ample literature here. This is one of the
I'm talking about that verse specifically. I'm talking about generally.
I'm talking about putting people to death. No, our religion, our understanding, right? There were never the social, as far as having the social, institutions to enforce these laws the way you are interpreting them, never existed in the history that we can tell in the history of the Hebrews.
Fine. It's an empirical question.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
It's an empirical question.
It is. Yeah. No,
And by the way, I'd also like to, if you could send me some literature that there was no slavery in the Old Testament. In other words, it's slaving of captives, prisoners from other nations. That didn't exist. That I'd be like to see that too.
There was slavery in terms of captives and debtors. The thing is that it is the Hebrew Bible which is the reason we don't have slavery. The first commandment is, I am the Lord your God who took you out of the house of slavery. And the Hebrew Bible is filled with, remember you were slaves, so don't mistreat other people. So this idea that that the Hebrew Bible teaches slavery as opposed to taught humanity not against slavery is just
well, I'm confused. Aren't there rules for keeping slaves in the Hebrew Bible?
All kinds of rules limiting and telling.
So there are rules for keeping slaves.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So if there are rules for keeping slaves, then it must be okay to keep slaves, right?
No.
Well, there's rules.
There's rules for all kinds of things that it says you should be doing less of and are not good things. So this is the thing with wisdom literature. Wisdom literature exists, right? Or cultural, right? Exists in order to improve humanity, right? It takes what humanity is and improves it. And that's what Hebrew scriptures, all scriptures, takes human beings as they are and shapes them towards a goal.
Okay. So from the TLC perspective, we want this wisdom to help other people. And I think I would generally concur with that statement. But of what does this wisdom consist?
That's part of the question. That's why one of the reasons why it's been so important to try to have a diversity of voices in this corner. Like my channel is the Jewish stuff. Right. There's other channels that are more Catholic or more, various things. And
so do you think all religions are true then?
I don't think all religions are true. I think that so you're aware of Spinoza's God?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
A little bit. I mean, he's basically like a pantheist or a panentheist,
he's
or
a deist,
the universe is God, or
so the classical God, right? The theism of over 1,000 years ago, before so much we started talking about the agentic Hebraic God, really, but Abrahamic God, right? Mm-hmm. Certainly Greek philosophy was the prime mover, whatever you want to call that. That reality which Plato's God was simply, okay, that which asserts itself ultimately was Plato's God.
Yeah, and I guess as that would fit into, look, Spinoza, if you want to say that the universe is the creator of everything or something, I would struggle to have an objection to that. However, I think that I'd have to kind of suss that out.
Well, that's the thing, and that's what a lot of people, I mean, in this corner, start with Spinoza's God, which honestly, it's you can't really be an atheist if we're talking about classical theism. And
well, I don't think Spinoza was but Spinoza was not a classical theist.
The term classical theist, we're
like Aristotle. Aristotle would be a classical theist.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Once you start with classical theism, you and stop, and this is what has happened to Vervaeke over a good 2-3 years, is he started as an atheist, then he started calling himself a non-theist, then he started calling himself a classical theist, and there's plenty of people in this little corner who are pretty sure he's going to end up becoming a Christian.
Well, I hope not, because Christianity is false.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So I don't.
My
Yeah. So I would say that would be an intellectual disability on the part of Mr. Vervaeke, or
I
a failure of nerve. That's what I would say.
I think it's actually a failure of nerve for him. But look, so it is literally against my religion to trespass on other people's religions.
I understand that for prudential reasons, if for nothing else. You are. I mean, you guys have been a minority, and people have been bashing you for a long time.
I correct. In any case, and so I'm not an evangelical of any sort. I
understand that.
I do have a problem with with two ideas that I think are actually causing a lot of problems in society in general. And those two ideas are postmodernism, which you seem to agree with me, and atheism. And by atheism, I don't mean agnosticism. I mean people who go around, sometimes they'll call it new atheism, people who go around evangelizing against religion, and I believe are causing a lot of problems, including the spread of postmodernism. Because people need a religion, they need a system of priorities. And without that theology, as Jung would call it, and that's what Ayaan Hirsi Ali has been saying, that's a lot of what it undergirds this little corner and has for 5 years. And I'm surprised you're so involved, but you haven't looked at the backlog and where we ended up at.
Well, I understand that. Look, unlike people in the TLC network, I don't claim to know everything, and I don't claim to be an expert on everything, from the poetry of Walt Whitman to Hegel to Heidegger to whatever. Yeah, I'm not really concerned about what people were doing 5 years ago in TLC, but what I don't want, as a former science and mathematics teacher, is people adopting sloppy ways of thinking and sloppy ways of talking, because I think it's dangerous. It's dangerous. As you know, and I've read a bit about the history of the persecution of the Jews in medieval Europe. You guys were, the demon thing was laid on you guys very thick.
Yes, it was.
And the witchcraft thing was laid on you very thick.
But
so I would think any talk of things like that should scare the living hell out of you.
Okay, so
because it's irrational, it's crazy, and yeah.
So let me just clarify one thing. A lot of the history that's taught in the United States comes from a Protestant point of view, and Protestants have spent a lot of time vilifying the Catholic Church. The fact is that in the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church was the source of moderating the anti-Semitism of the illiterate and the people who were. So it was actually the church hierarchy, which was limiting the amount of craziness that ran rampant in society. Again, and this is an empirical question. This is 100% an empirical question.
Yeah, by the way, I'm not reading Protestants on this. Yeah. I'm reading people like Raoul Hilderberg and Jewish authors. I'm not trying to read, Protestants.
I'm not sure which historians, but as far as I understand the current state of actual history, there isn't much question that the Catholic Church itself was in fact reducing the anti-Semitism of the general population.
Well, that's like I said. I'm not familiar with that. I would say this.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church didn't want to eliminate the Jews because the Jews are very important in prophecy, and so they might have tolerated them to a certain extent, but still, you probably had to walk around in different clothing. You probably had to live in separate, ghetto areas. You probably had to have all these restrictions on your people because, it was against the Christian faith to teach any other religion than Christianity.
Honestly, I mean, and I hope this does not in any way sound condescending, because you are a very intelligent person. I just think you haven't caught up with the discussion that we were having, and you're stumbling in on something that looks very different to you, simply because you are not familiar with the history of the ideas and their development.
Which ideas is that?
The idea of agregores, for example.
I think it's just cult-like language. That's how I see it. It's in-group, out-group, cult-like language. That's all it is.
I understand that
it's designed to be unclear.
No.
It's by design, it's unclear. So people can cram all these ideas in their heads into this vague, non-testable idea.
The debates between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson are right there. Millions of people have watched them. I would say, it's only, I think, 6 hours total, maybe 8 hours. And you've spent much more than that, as far as I know, listening to things here. I really do.
I think that a lot of Jordan Peterson stuff is vague.
Right.
And designed to be vague so he doesn't alienate his audience,
right,
which is a lot of Christians, okay?
Correct.
So he's being very vague, deliberately vague.
Yes.
He's not a stupid guy.
No, he's not.
So, but he's, look, when you have, I don't know how much money this guy's pulling in, but it's a lot.
Right.
And so when you talk about, but all this, I think it's, I just think when people are being, I guess it's in his 12 rules for life. Be clear what you're saying.
As clear as
clear.
You can be.
Be clear.
T Grogran, but it's a question of how clear you can be when you're talking to an audience, right? Honestly,
you can't be clear?
To me, you haven't done your homework.
Well, see, look, let's just say I haven't done my homework. That still doesn't mean Jordan Peterson's being clear. Okay.
I didn't say he was being clear. He's oftentimes very vague, deliberately. Yes.
Yeah. I do kind of object when we're having this discussion as my interlocutor with you're always saying, well, you just don't understand. You don't you don't realize.
I didn't say
you haven't done the work. You don't understand. if you read this book, if you read
right,
that book,
exactly. You don't know.
anybody,
there's
I
a
can say that about you. You don't know.
there are
So
things I don't know, but
it's
that
an ad.
doesn't seem relevant to this
It's
discussion.
to me, it smacks of an ad hominem argument. I really don't understand
Uh,
what's going on,
I,
and
I,
I would say
if I
that I
did say you don't
understand
understand, let me be
enough.
more clear.
Yes.
I don't think you know a lot of things that we have been discussing for a long time.
Well, the discussions are kind of freewheeling, and I'm struggling to see what specific points I might have missed because, as you know,
Yes,
the discussions are very open-ended.
correct.
People talk about poetry 1 minute. People talk about something Jesus might have said or Paul might have said another minute.
Correct.
Some people then start talking about egregores or relevance realization, which is not mainstream cognitive science, by the way. It's not.
Relevance realization?
No, it's not. It's not mainstream cognitive science. John Vervaeke is an assistant professor at the University of Toronto. He's not God. He's
No,
not a guru. He's not the be all and end all of cognitive science.
no.
So that's another objection I have. You guys have these gurus. You
Mhm.
seem to put faith in them. What they say is
Right.
correct.
Yeah.
Jonathan Pajot comes to mind. These other people, I just don't get it. I don't get it. What qualifies these people to talk about, like, say, biblical studies? They're not trained in biblical studies. I would never sit there and go, well, I'm an expert in biblical studies. I would never say that, things like that, because I'm not going to bullshit people. And to me,
So
a lot of this stuff smacks, and I'm sorry, I apologize if I offend you. A lot of this stuff smacks me as bullshitting.
you're not offending me in any way. I think calling bullshit on things is really important, and I am very, very um, against obscurantism. And part of the reason we, I think, in this little corner, we've definitely tried to have as much of an open conversation and include people who disagree, right? And you see that people do try to include you a lot more than in a lot
Well,
of
I
other
understand
places.
that, and I appreciate that.
Okay.
However, I
Yeah.
would say this: if sans me,
Mhm.
nobody disagrees about anything. Whatever some idea somebody it pops into somebody's head, everybody goes, "Yeah, wow, I never thought of that. That's deep," or something. It's
Are
like
you
an echo.
listening to
It's
the
like an
same
echo
things?
chamber. It's like
Hold on. Are
an
you
echo
listening to
chamber,
the same things I am?
huh?
Because at least on my channel, nobody's ever accused us of
Well, your channel. I'm talking about like Grail Country or whatever,
well,
right?
Grail Country. I have to say, one of the reasons I am at look, I don't go to war against Grail Country. One of the things I don't like about Grail Country is, in fact, that they put up with a lot more bullshit than I would, and I have always been very clear about that. That might be one of the reasons people said I should speak to you, because I am very critical of things on Grail Country that I find to be just woo and bullshit.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, but that's on Grail Country.
Yeah. So, um, I suppose that's one of the objections. And by the way, I wasn't trying to criticize you
No,
as a
that's fine.
person, but here's what the kind of crap I get in Grail Country. You're too right-brained. You are too literal. You are too this. You're
They
too
say that
that.
to me
You
too.
you don't understand the nuances. See, it's for the enlightened people like us. We have the true gnosis. See, that is bullshit. Okay,
It
that is
can be.
bullshit.
It can be. It can be. Look,
Yeah.
you're obviously a very intelligent person. And when somebody who's not intelligent pretends to be intelligent, I will cut them down. Because, look, there's a difference between somebody with a high IQ and somebody with a low IQ. There actually is a difference. And there are certain things certain people do.
I couldn't agree more.
Right?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's really important.
And by the way, I commend you for saying Christianity's false. I commend you for that. Because
you just trying I could also say Judaism's false.
To try and get somebody to say, I think Judaism is way ahead of Christianity. Okay,
I agree with you.
Way ahead. All right, but now I'm not a Jew, so I don't believe in Judaism either. But I think there's so many problems with the New Testament as a document. But anyway. Besides that,
I mean, logically, yeah, we can bash on the Christians later, but back to this.
I don't want to bash on Christians. I want to bash on bad ideas. I don't care about. I want to help people.
I think Christianity is a bad idea.
I want to get something straight here, Jacob.
Yeah.
I want to help people. I care about people.
Good.
I see what these poor people in Mormonville go through. And the hell they go through because of their shitty ideas. Okay?
I hear you.
They literally think, some of these whack jobs here literally think that when people masturbate, demons actually enter their bodies. I mean, this is the kind of bullshit we're dealing with here. Think about that. So I'm combating that shit because I think it's terrible and horrible, right? I dated a girl in Mormonville. Yeah. She got raped when she was 15. Right. Okay, she got raped. They used to teach, they don't teach it now, but they used to teach in Mormonville. They'd say, they did this at a class my daughter attended 15 years ago. They pass out a stick of gum to every girl in the class, chew the gum, and now hand it to your partner. Do you want to chew that gum now? Well, the gum's been chewed, so you don't want to chew it. So if you lose your virginity, you're like that worthless piece of chewed gum. That's what you are. So I think disastrous, catastrophic ideas like that should be fought.
I understand where you're coming from. You reminded me. So there was one of the debates between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson was moderated by Brett Weinstein, and what Sam Harris kept on harping on was, do you believe in a God who cares if you masturbate? I don't believe in a God who cares if I masturbate. Da 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 da. Right, and he kept on talking about God who cares if you masturbate. And Brett Weinstein, who's an evolutionary biologist, has said, hold on. I can explain to you very easily why God would care if you masturbate. Because he's a biologist. So you don't have to, but I think if you take seriously the ideas that Brett Weinstein and his wife talk about in their book, 21st Century Guide to Stone Age Man's Guide, something like that. I forget the name of their book. I could look it up.
Okay.
Or the debates that I seriously think you would find.
That's fine. I'll be happy to. What I'll do is I'll download it on my phone and I'll listen to it. I think I've heard enough snippets of it that I don't believe in the. I have profound problems with the idea of metaphorical truth. Okay, I think that there could be. I prefer to say there may be some things that it is good to practice
Mm-hmm.
because of the probability of harm. Okay.
Right.
So all guns are loaded.
Correct.
It's a rule.
That's
Okay.
the example.
It's not a metaphorical truth. It's a practice
Okay.
to reduce harm
Okay.
based upon probabilities.
Okay.
It's not a metaphorical truth.
Okay.
It's like fire insurance.
Okay. So
Okay.
are we just arguing about semantics?
No, well, I don't like the word metaphorical is unnecessary and confusing.
Are you sure it's an unnecessarily confusing?
I think it's vague enough to be confusing.
I
In
agree
other
with
words,
you.
you could say
My
anything.
question was, is it unnecessarily confusing?
Well, I think and I'm talking about the masses of people don't even know what a metaphor is. Okay,
Correct.
let's start with that.
Correct.
So why don't we just say this is a practice that is a prudent thing to do given the gun might be loaded, right? It's
Because
like having fire insurance. You
okay,
have fire insurance on your house. Is your house going to burn down? Probably not.
you're talking to an insurance broker.
Right.
So,
Right.
But
And
the
I do have fire
question
insurance, by the way.
becomes, the question becomes, is it unnecessarily confusing? Because some people, we are talking about a broad range of IQ, and there are truths which, and this is so. I really want to send you. So Maimonides, one of the great rabbis, he lived about 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, I know. I'm familiar with Maimonides.
So when he was about 25, he wrote a commentary on the Mishnah.
Right.
And one snippet of what he wrote became the foundation of the 13 principles of Jewish faith, and in a very real sense defines Judaism to this now.
Great. I'll read it right after we hang up.
I'll do you a favor and
I appreciate
summarize.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So he gives an analogy, and he says this analogy is the most important thing to understand religion. When you have a child and you tell the child to read, you tell him, I'll give you candy if you learn to read.
Mm-hmm.
And as he gets older, you tell him, if you do your homework, I will give you a coin.
Right.
And as he gets older, you tell him, I'll buy you nice clothes. And as he gets older, you tell him, hey, if you study well, you'll get a good job. And as he gets older, you'll say, hey, if you're a wise person, people will respect you. But
Right.
ultimately, once he gets to the very end, he understands that the coin and the clothes and the respect, all of them pale in comparison to the wisdom that he has gained. But you can't tell a child, you can't tell a 5-year-old, hey, if you learn how to read, you will really love the wisdom you're going to get out of this.
Well, yes, I understand that. Obviously, education has to be tailored to people's
capacities.
Yeah, capacities. I understand
where they
that.
are, right?
Yeah, I understand that. But I think that would argue against the idea of metaphorical truth, because most people don't even know what a metaphor is. So if you say instead, well, this is a helpful rule to avoid you from blowing your brains out. All guns are loaded. Now it's a cautionary rule. Like, look both ways before you cross the street.
How about you just say it's true?
Well, not all guns are loaded. That's not a fact.
Correct. And
That's not a fact. So I'd feel very uncomfortable telling somebody that that's true. I would say
somebody who
it's
doesn't
a rule. It's a rule to prevent you from doing harm to yourself or other people. All right.
somebody
It's
who
kind of
doesn't
like look both ways before you cross the street.
T Grog,
Yeah.
somebody who doesn't even understand the word metaphor, I mean, again, so this is one of the things, like there is a level of vagueness, and this is why texts, especially wisdom literature and liturgies, have multiple layers. That's why they can be a poetic, and there's a first layer of understanding and a second layer of understanding. And that doesn't mean that the second layer of understanding contradicts the first layer of understanding. It just means that as you gain, and you can go into Piaget's stages of development, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as somebody understands things only very concretely as a child does, right? So saying something is true, hopefully, when they're old enough, they will understand the difference between a metaphorical truth and a literal truth. But to say that it's true is not in any way bad, especially if the less a person understands, the more likely they are to use it cautiously and to actually treat that gun like something that's dangerous.
I see what you're saying, I think. However, we have certain rules of logic, the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction. When you start introducing different ranges of truth, you're corrupting these laws, because you could say, well, it's not really contradictory, it's a metaphor, see, or this doesn't look like this, but it really is this, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
So there's a corruption that I think you fall into postmodernism, frankly, because you're using language in these very and then you have layers of meaning. This gets into esoterica and who interprets these layers. Who are these people with this gnosis? What qualifies them to reach into the deepness of these layers? Mystical experiences? Floating saints? Who are these people? And what gives them this special superpower that they understand these, like Pajot is one of these famous ones for this. Who is this guy? What does he know? I mean,
he's an artist.
Yeah, well, okay, he's an artist, so he's qualified to talk about art.
That's what he does.
Not metaphysics, not the structure of the world, Bible scholarship, philosophy, science, what have you. He's an artist.
Yeah.
So let's be humble and not project our art into other realms of ontology.
But right? Okay, so this is, I mean, you are perfectly correct in saying, I mean, I believe you're a nominalist, and you are perfectly correct in saying these things are moving forward into post-nominalism, which postmodernism, and what this little corner or the Peterson sphere is a reaction to postmodernism.
But they are postmodern.
What?
They are postmodern.
Oh yeah. Hopefully we're postmodern. That's the hope.
Well, if you can't use rules of logic and there are gurus interpreting layers of reality and depth of reality based upon some kind of gnosis that they allegedly have, I don't think that's,
Well, okay.
I think that's, I don't know what that is.
I,
Nothing good.
Well, that's the thing. Postmodernism has very salient, important critiques of nominalism, which is your position. And I understand you haven't bothered with those. But the fact is that these ideas have, in fact, been advanced and have taken over the institutions of our society. And what you are seeing is people who are, in fact, trying to take what postmodernism has said about nominalism and move, and this is what, for a time, I was trying to explain this stuff. I called it post-nominalist Neoplatonism, right? We are, in fact, discussing and trying to understand how we as a society, and it's a necessary one because we live in this society, right? I have to deal with the fact that UCLA Medical School, which is about 2 miles north of me, and where my
I know about that. I know a little bit about that. Yeah.
And the doctors, I mean, I go to UCLA for my healthcare.
You might want to think about switching.
You've heard of what's going on there.
Think about USC. Might be better.
We really have to deal with the problems of postmodernism.
I understand that. So what's the solution for you guys, from you guys, for postmodernism?
For me, the solution is you have to have a symbolic framework, an artistic framework to undergird how you live your life. Without a symbolic framework, you will end up with what we have ended up with, which is the craziness of postmodernism. And that it's called the replacement hypothesis. Peter Boghossian, who is an atheist.
I'm familiar with Peter.
Yeah, Peter Boghossian has been the one who's been talking about this stuff the most.
Right. I would say it's just anti-scientific. Okay.
It's not anti-scientific. I'm
talking about this UCLA medical thing. It's just anti-scientific. Testing is highly predictive of performance of physicians. Highly predictive. As a matter of fact, standardized testing was actually brought in to make it fair for people who couldn't go to private schools, who couldn't go to Phillips Exeter, who couldn't go to Yale because they went to the right prep school. Standardized testing works. Standardized testing is highly predictive. It's the best predictive method we have. Better than grades, better than anything. Okay? So that's a scientific fact.
Correct.
That is not questionable.
Correct.
So if people knew more about that and said, well, I really don't want to get a doctor who got a 30%, in the 30th centile on an MCAT because I think he might kill me. Yes, he or she or whoever, they probably won't be a very good doctor.
Let me hit you with one of my what I call Jacob's.
So that's a scientific claim.
Yeah.
Okay. And that has nothing to do with symbology. That has nothing to do with.
That's where you're wrong.
Yeah, it has nothing to. In my opinion, it has nothing to do with.
I understand. I hope I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Let me hit you with one of my Jacob's greatest hits, which is if they had exploded an atomic bomb on each one of the University of California and California State University campuses, they would have done less damage to Western society than when they decided to eliminate the SAT as an admissions requirement. And I believe that.
Well, that's an interesting. I haven't heard of that. I'd have to suss that out because
it's one of my. I have certain things I say which are shocking, but I would say worth thinking about. And I agree with you 100%.
Contrary to, and I do know a little bit about this because
Yeah.
I did do graduate level stuff in counseling psychology. So I did take advanced courses in psychological testing and stuff like that.
Okay.
Now, I'm not talking about personality tests, okay? I'm not talking about interest inventories. I'm talking about deloaded academic tests.
Correct.
ACT, SAT, Miller analogies, Miller analogies. These are reliable.
Correct.
Accurate.
Correct.
They work. The idea that you can take somebody, this is a fallacy, and this gets back to I don't want to sound, all right, I have to word this properly because we are on YouTube. You can't take a 135-pound guy and make him a linebacker in the NFL.
Correct.
Okay, it's just not going to happen.
I agree.
Okay, I don't care how fast they are. I don't care how they did in calculus. It's not going to happen. Okay, so in our human condition here, we have limits. Okay,
Correct.
and people are different. People are different. I look
And
at my
they're
brothers. I'm
intellectually
sure. Do you have brothers and sisters? Do
I
you have
have a
brothers?
sister.
Okay. Is she the same as you?
No.
Are you? How close are you? Are you 30% close? 100% close? 50% close? What?
Not
How
sure
different are you?
how you would put that.
Well, I mean, okay, personality.
Personality-wise, we're very different, but she doesn't test as well as I do, but she's very high.
Okay, so she's very different than you. You're raised in the same household.
Correct.
With the same parents.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so
Even
you're
twins.
different than her. So there
twins.
must be something else going on here.
Yeah.
It's not just your environment. Okay.
Correct.
So you can't. The fallacy is people don't understand that testing is not racist. It's not sexist. It's not any of that crap.
Yep.
They could do blind testing where you have a number, okay? They don't even see you.
Shapes.
Okay?
You could do shapes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there are tests that are completely nonverbal. They're completely nonverbal.
Yes.
Okay, they have no, it's I forget what they call it, but they do it a lot with autism because autists are not very good at verbal stuff. Okay,
Correct.
I'm very good at verbal reasoning. If you haven't ascertained that, I'm very good at verbal stuff, right? So it's here's 3 shapes. What's the next shape?
Correct.
Say here's 3 boxes with different lines. What's the next box?
Correct.
So those are highly reliable. And the US Army has been using tests like this for decades because it works. It's highly predictive. You can't have a guy with an IQ of 80 running a nuclear missile silo, okay? Or doing repairs on a B-2 bomber. It's not going to work.
So you were a teacher.
Yes.
When they took the SAT requirement out of the University of California,
that's a disaster.
Imagine. I also taught. I taught middle school and elementary.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, the dumbest student really does bring down the level of conversation and learning in the classroom.
Yeah, and it's worse than that because if that person is of a protected class, you have a lot of pressure on you to pass them.
Yes, which brings
you have a lot of pressure on you to pass them.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a public school teacher, I had pressure to pass athletes all the time.
Right.
So, and I wouldn't do it,
Yeah.
but I got in trouble for that. But,
Yeah.
um,
And so that's where I get the idea that dropping a nuclear bomb on these campuses would have done less damage than taking out the SAT minimum SAT requirements from college admissions. My question to you is,
yes,
then, I mean, knowing all of this, which is obvious to anybody who actually looks at it,
yes.
how did we end up in a place where the University of California dropped at standardized testing as a admissions requirement?
Well, they've allowed people to say standardized testing is racist, but it's not.
Correct.
It's not racist.
So
it's not
why?
racist any more than having a 50-yard dash to qualify for the NFL is racist.
Correct.
It's not racist at all.
Correct.
It's a measurement. It's the best scientific measurement we have of future performance in academic disciplines. Okay. Like it or not, that's what we have. Okay. Maybe in the future we can put little electrodes on people's heads and we can measure it that way. But it has something to do, I think, with processing speed in your brain, and it's very.
But I'm asking you about our institutions. How did we end up in a place where our institutions, I mean, obviously what you're saying is correct.
Yes.
I agree with you. It's not SATs were the opposite of racist. In fact, the SATs allowed many people to prove that they are capable despite the racism.
Yes.
And frankly, I would say that East Asian population who were treated horribly in the history of the United States. There is no population that has more recently been maltreated systematically in the United States than the Japanese Americans who were interned during World War II. And standardized testing has helped them gain entry into our society in marvelous ways, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah,
How did we end up?
People don't understand what standardized testing was and why it was initiated, because they wanted to get people that had the most talent. That's what it was. Now they still do standardized testing, as far as I'm aware, in India, China, Russia, other places around the world. As a matter of fact, I think in Europe, I mean, you don't even get to go to high school in some countries if you don't test well. So we've got this kind of.
How did we end up here?
Huh?
How did we end up here? Why is it that the University of California is not using standardized testing?
That's an interesting sociological question.
Yes.
You're the sociology.
And that's part of the reason why.
So why do you think?
I think it is the atheism. It is the lack of wisdom and adherence to wisdom literature. It is the falling of the humanities. So we had this upside down where we started thinking that the hard sciences are where the really smart people need to be, and the social sciences is where the okay people can be, and the arts and humanities is where we can put the dumb people and the creative people and the people who aren't very good at math, and that our society could continue to function. And I think the absolute opposite happened, because theology, in the Jungian sense, is in fact the foundation of how society operates. And when you don't have art as a vehicle for wisdom, when you don't have the aligning and orientation in your society that religion provides, your society ends up, in terms of Jesus, you exercise one spirit and 7 worse come back in.
Yeah, I would say this. I would say that when a lot of this discrimination was practiced in the United States was a very religious country, very religious. The discrimination against Jews and blacks and Native Americans happened when many more people were going to churches and professed belief
I'm
in
not
faith.
I'm
Yeah,
not saying we
so
should go back, and I am not saying that it was perfect. I am saying that we may have thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And that is the main discussion that we are having in this little corner, is about what are we going to do if our society, the cohesion, every human society we know of, the center of every city we know of, has been populated by a temple. There's a temple at the center of every city we know of.
mm-hmm.
And what we did was we thought, hey, we can have a city without a temple in the middle. And guess what? The city is falling apart.
Well, I would say, yeah, that's an interesting idea. I have to think about that. But I agree with you. Religion must serve some purpose. I think it has to do with terror management. And I
That's
would say
not
that there's something, Freud had some ideas about that with psychodynamics and parent-child relationship. You reach out your arms to your mom or your dad when you're a little kid. People reach out their arms to their big God in the sky that's going to save them. So yeah, and plus I think that religion gives a group cohesiveness, so it gives them an evolutionary advantage in killing off other groups. So there's that.
religion
However,
needs to bind.
however, the problem you're going to have is, and I hear this through with the ortho bros talking about, well, we'll just outbreed everybody. The problem is we live in a scientific age, and unless science collapses, which could happen,
Which I'm scared might happen.
yeah, which could happen. People aren't going to go back to believing all this stuff based
But
on
they
ancient
are.
texts. I don't think so. I don't think having ancient texts that tell stories about people flying up into the air or fire coming down out of heaven or things like that. I just don't. I think that's a non-starter for the modern world. People don't. They don't think in terms of. They think in terms of forces of nature, and they don't think in terms of spirits or mysterious voodoo powers or things like that. They just don't think that way. Now there are people there. I would say this.
Yeah.
There are places in the world where they do think like that, and those are places nobody in this world would want to live in. Okay.
I am a refugee from Iran. I came here with asylum from the Islamic Revolution in
Well,
Iran.
I'm glad you got out, my friend.
I am very glad we got out as well.
That was a smart move.
It was not easy. I remember as a child when the Ayatollah died, my sister and I started jumping up and down when we heard the news, and my dad told me something I'll never forget. He said, "We should be grateful for to the Ayatollah. Without him, we would still be in Iran." And he still says to my sister, "There's no way you would be a pharmacist if we were still in Iran. So you should be thankful."
I couldn't agree more.
I
couldn't agree more. Yeah, well, listen, it's been nice talking to you. Jacob, you're a very smart guy. I appreciate it. If you'll send me that information, I
Oh,
always like
I
to
will
learn.
send you a bunch of information.
I've certainly been wrong in the past, and I'm sure I'll be wrong in the future. So
I 100% agree with that. Yes. Is there anything you want to finish off with?
just think clearly and logically and demand evidence.
Those are important things. Those are important things. Yeah. Um, if so,
And be suspicious of gurus. Be very suspicious.
I would say be suspicious, but also I would say be skepticism is good, cynicism is not. And
You're not as old as I am, so cynicism is a creeping disease.
So one of the things I say is I'm about to turn 47. What I believe now
I'm
is
70. I'm 70, so.
What I believe now is not what I believed when I was 37, not when I was 27, not when I was 17, right. And not when I was 7. So I have no anticipation that what I believe at 57 or 67 is going to be what I believe now.
Fair enough. Okay, nice talking to you, my friend.
Be well.
And go to USC Medical Center. Skip UCLA. I don't want you to have a problem.
Okay, T Grog, I'm gonna pull you off, and I am actually gonna open up the discussion. If people seem very excited about this discussion, and Ryan, I have zero clue what you said in Korean. So if anybody wants to jump on, you can. I should send. Garth!
Hello. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. Ooh, loud. Hold on. Let me hear. Audio. Do I just turn the volume down on my computer? Yeah.
No, you should not have YouTube open, or at least you should mute the YouTube tab that
YouTube is muted.
You're watching. Okay.
So yeah, whenever I go on these, I always will put it off to the side and mute it. For that.
What is the meaning of "because I am a jealous God" in Genesis? I would actually translate it as "I am a zealous God," not as a jealous God, meaning that God will in fact do the things that He would do. But thank you for reminding me. I should send T Grog some information. So what do you think?
I thought it was a pretty good discussion. I don't know. It's like, I think, so there was one, I don't know if T Grog is even still listening, but there's kind of one point where he said, where like how Jonathan Peugeot is an artist, he's not a philosopher or a theologian or all these things, but it's like, there are some things where certain professions can be strengthened by having the overlap. And I wrote it in the comments where if you are a machinist, it is very good for you to know some good math and just some good physics, because it will help you out so much.
Okay, so this gets into the question of distributed cognition. And the fact is, no individual person thinks by themselves. We always think in community with others.
Mm-hmm.
And what is necessary for that to be done well is intellectual humility, which is something that T Grog was talking about, and it is important, right? But it's hard to know if somebody is intellectually humble or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look, I don't sound very humble intellectually, and so when I didn't get into the whole thing with the B theory of time or Omphalos with T. Rogan, because T. Grogran, Grog, okay, T. Grog. I didn't get into those things because, as he said, he thinks that stuff is bullshit. And if he thinks that's bullshit, that's fine for him to think that's bullshit.
Sure.
That's right. And me telling him, hey, you know, the B theory of time, philosophers really love it, right? He's a very skeptical person. And he's like, philosophers are full of bullshit. Okay. But that comes from a distrust of our institutions, which, frankly, given our institutions, is quite understandable because our institutions have, in fact, been taken over by idiots and obvious idiots. But that's what I'm trying to fix here. I mean, from the rules of my Discord server, the first rule is we are all here because we see a lot of not only incompetence, but downright corruption. It is eating away at our society. People are justifiably distrustful. I hope it is perfectly clear that I am just as worried about corrupt and negligent administration of power as everyone else here. But the solution is not to stop trying to find trustworthy people. It is to secure a distributed cognition, to learn to earn each other's trust and extend that trust in competent ways, right? So when it comes to cognitive science, I do trust John Vervaeke, partially because I also trust Yosef and I also trust Sam, both of whom have studied cognitive science. And so having institutions, having people you can trust is incredibly important. And T. Grog, not being a religious person, doesn't have anybody to trust. But that's part of the problem of not being a religious person.
Sure, right. I guess for me, it's like, I think it's like the reason I use the machinist example is because machining is like a very tangible thing that you do to where, and it's like, and like, it is like actually something where you can apply like mathematical concepts in physics to help you do something tangible. In the same way that I very much think that philosophy and theology help Jonathan Pageau with his art, that basically that there is a level of integration within these particular professions, and that they are not isolated to strengthen your point of distributed cognition. It's like these people talk to those people, you know, to have this. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're agreeing. Frankly, a lot of the things, it just seems to me like T. Grog, like I said, he hasn't seen the development of how we got here, where we got here, and frankly, hopefully, being able to explain and batten things down in a way that is understandable. I'm just afraid we're going to lose T. Grog and we won't have any atheists again.
Right. And that's a valid, and honestly, yeah, that's, yeah.
It keeps on happening to us. We get people who are very like that type. The only people we have who are actually saying those things are people like Digital Gnosis. Hey, Yon God, if you want to jump in, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, get in here. What are you doing? Okay.
Let me just get these links.
T Grog, when you're in the chat, you are just a whole different person.
There are all these videos. Oh, did you see the Defense Against the Dark Arts video?
I did. That was a great video. I loved
It
it.
is so good.
It was amazing.
It is so good. It was like, oh my god, this is next level.
That honestly is part of how I have thought about this TLC. It is like we are like having these discussions to like actually strengthen ourselves from things like, you know, nihilism or despair or something that is currently happening right now. At least it has for me personally. So in that sense, it has worked on me.
Cool.
By the way, as far as you coming to my wedding,
Yeah.
you like okay. CW told me that you asked him about what you should wear for the wedding. You could just wear like full formal or like casual or like semi-formal. That should be fun. Like, do you have a full suit and tie?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
I was just wondering.
Okay. No, you're good.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
I'm why he couldn't just answer me, I have no idea.
Oh, you never got an answer back from him?
Oh, his answer was get wrecked. That was his answer. His answer was get wrecked. He sent a gif that said get wrecked. That is what CW sent me in response to what can I wear to the wedding?
That is so funny to me. Holy, I'm sorry. It's like, oh, holy crap. Okay. But I'm sorry, Jacob. It's like such a funny CW response because I feel like it's something that he would say. Oh my goodness. But anyway, also, in addition to the wedding, once I get most of the wedding stuff settled and mostly planned out, I probably will also plan a get together with you, Luke, CW, and some other people from the Minnesota Estuary as well.
So let me know before I buy my tickets when the stuff's gonna be.
Okay, I'll probably try to plan for it on the Sunday of that weekend.
Okay.
Ideally, but
so
we'll
the
see.
wedding's on Friday, so I should. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long I can get people to babysit my kids. Happy and Shadow. Sorry, they can't come to the wedding. But when I have plenty of babysitting, I like to fly on Wednesdays. It's cheaper, and I get to actually see stuff. But I've been to Minnesota before, and you guys don't have that much stuff to see.
What are you? Okay, hold on. I gotta stop you right there, sir, because I have lived in this state for too long to say that we have nothing to do here. We have the Mall of America. That's one thing.
Okay.
Have you ever been to the Mall of America?
I have not been to the Mall of America.
Well, there you go. You're missing out. We also have tons of like nature parks that are absolutely beautiful to go to. Like Minnesota has the best nature in the Midwest, along with Wisconsin. Like everything is green. There are tons of parks. Let's see, what else is there? I mean, there's tons of stuff to do in the Twin Cities. There's tons of museums. When I went to the in-person Jordan Peterson tour that he was doing, I got a VIP pass, and I was like, what am I going to say to him? And I was like, I know what I'm going to say. I said, hey, Jordan, if you ever get a chance to go to the Russian Art Museum in the Twin Cities, you should go. That was the one thing I said to him because I know he loves Russian art.
Russian Art Museum. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when I went to Britain, London, we went to we went to all these museums, like the Victoria and Albert Museum, and like I went and saw the changing of the guards. And only on the last day, Jacob is kind of sort of outdoorsy, not really. On the last day, I went to the British Museum and I was like, oh my God, I could spend the rest of my life in this museum. Like the British went, conquered all of the world, stole everybody's treasures, brought it home, and like put it in one museum. And like I could spend the rest of my life there. So if I ever go back to London, horrible weather, I have to say. I spend years in the British Museum. How you doing, Andrew?
Hey, Andrew.
Big chillin'.
Same.
Let's
How are
go.
glasses?
Has the econ class? And it's not bad, but it's not
I'm pretty sure
great
it's
either.
really bad.
Oh, dude, I think the last chapter is gonna kill me. It's all about the Federal Reserve. Oh my God.
So he's taking econ for non-econ majors,
Mm-hmm.
and it's macroeconomics in California. It's going to be horrible.
Mm.
Californians teaching economics.
Oh, that's the other thing T Grogran is. Let me ask Yosef.
So are you two taking the same class then? Oh, okay.
Are you kidding? There is no way in hell I would take a macroeconomics class ever.
With Andrew?
With anyone. Macroeconomics, like we were talking about voodoo. Like, you want to talk about voodoo? Macroeconomics? Voodoo. Like
No.
that was part of the thing. Like I was asking T Grog, like, what do you think of string theory? Because like string theory
Didn't that basically get like, not debunked isn't the right word, but like upheave? Because it's like they like,
it's only in our little corner.
really?
You don't
Okay.
understand. String theory still occupies all of the faculty positions all over the United States.
I thought string theory was like I've heard from a couple like YouTube like people who love physics to be like, hey, it's like, you know, we have tried string theory for like 40 years and it turns out that it's just like not like
It is unfalsifiable and it predicts nothing.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's
Yes.
a debunked theory.
Well, no, it's not been debunked because
Okay.
it's unfalsifiable. The
Oh,
problem is yes, on YouTube, everybody makes fun of string theory, but it's only YouTube that makes fun of string theory. In actual physics, mainstream physics, like string theorists are gods. They're the priests because that's how it works when you're atheists.
We were all marionettes in the end.
Man, I got a short haircut. I lost the mullet, and it's killing me. It's killing me. It's all over.
Hey, look, it's like I just took a shower. Like
Oh, he's dying.
I am dying. I just took a shower like an hour and a half ago, and it's like the amount of tangles that I had to go through in my hair all the time. It's like it is a curse and a blessing. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
It looks awesome. If you could pull it off, but it is work.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot of work.
Yeah.
So,
The mullet was great. I think I'm gonna stick with the mullet. I just gotta grow it back out.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you wait? I don't remember you with a mullet. How long ago was this?
This was like a month ago.
What? No way.
Yeah, legit.
Dang. Okay, I must have never seen the back of your head then.
Yeah. Probably.
Cause okay, all right. Because this is like what my hair looks like right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm trying to have more hair than my fiance. That's the goal. Actually, her and I, we actually do have like almost the same hair color. So it's like we're like two people walking with the same hair. It's kind of funny. Except I have a beard and she does not. That's the only way we can tell ourselves apart. That and our height.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's my goal for me to not have a beard and my boyfriend to have a beard. What?
Boyfriend?
What? No, I'm joking.
So you're telling me you just decided to marry her because of her hair color?
Yes. No, there are a lot of other reasons I want to marry her.
So should I actually read any of these comments people have put in the chat?
Jacob, you have to read all
they're
the
going
comments.
nuts.
I don't think I've read any of the comments. Did anybody say anything important or good?
Let's see.
Well, Grizz gave me $2, which is amazing.
Heck yeah. Nice.
And since it's YouTube, I'll probably get like 60 cents of those $2.
That's probably true.
So I didn't watch anything with T Grogran. Like, was he cool?
He's very smart, and he has a lot of criticisms which I agree with. And it's funny because he's been spending time over at Grail Country, and like my criticism of Grail Country is they're too wooey, and he thinks they're too wooey, and it's like, I agree with you, they're too wooey. But at the same time, like, he dislikes the idea of metaphorical truth, and he thinks talking about metaphorical truths is unnecessarily confusing. And that's what I challenged him on. I'm like, how do you know it's unnecessarily confusing?
Yeah.
I will say, Jacob, have you heard about, or Andrew, have you heard about the YouTube channel Ready to Harvest? Paul, PBK has mentioned it before, and I'm subscribed to them. And they recently came out with a video called Word Salad, and it's a really good video to watch because what he does with his YouTube channel is that he will put out like surveys of like statements that are from certain denominations, and he'll have strongly agree, slightly agree, or slightly agree, slightly disagree, and strongly disagree, or not sure / just show the results. And a very common thing that got shown up is that this is word salad, right? It's like each statement is like kind of like, are like making certain assertions about like very high theological concepts. But what happens is that it's not like quite like graspable in any tangible way to like a lot of like non-theologically trained people. Right. And that's and that's where I sympathize with T Grog, because it's like you do need some language in a sense to be like, hey, like to be able to point to something. Right. But at the same time, there also is like another part of me where it's like I do not ever want to discount the potential that high language can be like that high language like that has potential or something like that.
Look, the
Right?
Nicene Creed, the vast majority of people, like, they can recite it. They have no idea what it means, and they have no idea what's important to it, right?
Sure. Yeah. I like.
Like the filioque, right? Probably more people have died because of that one word, filioque, right, than any other single word in human history. Like, I'm trying to think, like, any single word that could maybe Trinity in terms of like Muslims and Christians killing each other, but I doubt it. Right? Like filioque, adding that word to the creed in the Latin,
Yeah.
thousands of people, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people died because of adding that word, right? Vast majority of people have no clue what filioque refers to, what it means, how it's at all relevant. But tens of thousands of people died because of it.
But like, I don't know. Here's what I think of, because I think of like what you're talking about when you say that. It's like that to me seems like that's like the political way of thinking it almost, right? Like how it creates like different power dynamics between groups, right? It's like you have this side that's this, right? And this side that is that, right? But I guess to me, it's like I'm not thinking about that in terms of its like political sense. I'm thinking of it in like what what content is there like for me to help my understanding, right? Like looking at the content to be like not to go out and form like political groups, but just for purposes of understanding.
Okay, Garth,
Right.
My question to you is, would you change your church if your church suddenly started believing in single procession instead of double procession of the Holy Spirit?
Procession.
That's the filioque question. Whether the whole entire filioque thing is whether the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father or from the Father and the Son. That's what filioque means. And the
Right.
Son.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Now, your church, because it's not an Eastern Orthodox church and it's a church in Minnesota, believes in double procession. Would you, if your elder council tomorrow on Sunday said, well, tomorrow is Sunday, tomorrow made an announcement, guys, we now believe in single procession. We don't believe in double procession. Would you change churches?
I don't know. I feel like if that happened to me, I wouldn't immediately act on it because, I mean, to me, it's like for how long I've been at this church, it's like I trust the leadership enough. Like I've gotten to know the pastors, so it's like, and this is not a topic that I am learned in, so I have to be humble in that sense.
Okay.
It would definitely, I don't know, it would something that I would have to think about.
Okay.
Like,
but you go to a Lutheran church, right?
No, evangelical free church.
Okay, so you go to an evangelical free church. Once you switch to single procession, technically, you would not be in communion with, you would not be considered a Christian by majority of other Christians, including basically all Protestants.
Well, actually, one thing that would happen is that they would have to be disassociated from the evangelical free denomination. So that would actually be something that would happen. So there's that. But I don't know. Do Protestants really not think that Orthodox are Christian?
Yon God really wants me to read this for some reason. I mean, this is equivalent to the Jews accepting that their original text never existed in any language other than Greek, and that the Torah is Greek monotheistic fan fiction. I have no idea what Yon God is saying. But you were telling me, so let's say your church disaffiliates from the other free churches. Are you still going to keep on going to your church, or are you going to go find a different church?
Like, if that actually happened, I don't know. It would be very conflicting for me internally, because I obviously have some sense of attachment to this church. But yeah, I don't know. It would be tough, but yeah, that's the best answer I could give you. Like, if that actually happened to me in real life.
Yeah, it's not. But this is not like single procession and double procession is not something you actually personally care about. Like, you don't actually care single procession or double procession, do you?
Well, like, the concept itself, it's like, how much do I care about it? It's like, I can't say I haven't been too invested in it. I don't know if I would ever discount the idea that I should, like, never care about it, because it's like, if I become more and more learned, and it's like, maybe this is something to care about. So I don't know. It has potential, but right now I just haven't engaged with it yet, if that makes sense.
Right. And I mean, again, Yon God, I'm not sure what you're trying to say. Yes, and you personally don't care, Federaci. Just call me Jacob. If your original texts are in Greek, you care about the culture, and ultimately the history is whatever it is. See, it applies to you too. I wasn't saying anything doesn't apply to me. I don't understand what you're saying. No, and my whole point, which I thought I was clear from the very beginning, is we think in community with others, and like it doesn't matter that it's a word salad, right? Like, the statement of faith on your church website is what binds you to all the other places. Good morning. Did you just wake up, Sherry? Like, you're on Pacific time. It's only 11:30. I am not in any way challenging Garth's beliefs.
No, he really isn't. This is like this is basically like, you know,
we're just talking.
Like, I would say what Jacob's doing is like, basically is like, we're discussing on how statements like these like impact us, right? It's like, Jacob is not being like, oh, you're wrong. It's like how do these statements integrate with ourselves? That's what we're talking about here. So I don't know. Have you ever heard this, like, the time when kids in school, it's like, math is dumb. When are we ever going to use these, like, concepts? I'm never going to use these. And then it turns out later on, it's like, oh, you know, like, having some sense of algebra or some sense of multiplication or whatnot, it's like, it turns out that they can actually be useful every now and then. That's how I treat it, right? Because it's like, and that's why I'm like, on the surface, it can seem like obligatory, but then it's like, you start to go down, and you're just like, oh, this is actually a lot more important than I originally thought, right? Like, you have that revelation. So, that's what I think about that.
What's more important, the doctrine or the relationship? But I think that's part of the point of what we were talking about. The doctrine is what creates the relationship.
Yeah, that there's, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have actually solved for X in real life many times. I do
Same.
solve for X, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I've even done two equations and solved the two together. So I'm that geeky. Sorry.
Oh, okay. You want to know what I've had to do before? So, I've literally had to come up with certain formulas. So, okay, so basically, when I make a tool, there could be certain points where there is a edge, where there's a drill, and let's say the drill has a contour that looks like this, but there's a radius right here where it is, and in order to accurately measure that, you have to find that intersection point where that radius is. So, but you don't have that on your print, so you have to mathematically solve what that hypothetical tangent point would be between those lines with a radius. And it's actually having to use geometric principles and trigonometry and algebra just to have a tool to be able to do that. And I have these written down in my notebook at work. So
Sherry is in Germany. And Jewish Pentecost is this Tuesday night.
Okay, Sandy, that's funny because GN is my initials. Good night, Sandy.
Good night.
So, anyway, so it's that's how I treat those high theological concepts where it's doesn't seem useful, but once you are able to appropriately integrate that into other things, then you start to see a bigger picture, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I think it just goes back to distributed cognition. You trust the elders of your church, and they're a part of a denomination, and yes, you're part of that community, and that's partially when I forget what exactly T Grog asked me about whether I believe it or not, and I started talking about the different magisteria. Jacob, do you believe there are rabbis who actually know the name of God and they keep it secret? No. But I mean, I actually do believe in revelation.
yeah.
And I do believe there are rabbis who know all kinds of things in ways I don't understand. So, but that gets into intellectual humility.
Mm-hmm. Ideally, what I would love to happen, right, is let's say that this event did happen at my church, right? It's I would have to seriously look into these concepts and look at them as best I can, and then go to the pastors and be this is what I found, right? To the best of my abilities, because that's all I can do in a situation that I feel like I have to interpret myself to some degree, right? So, anyway.
I wonder when Sherry's going to get to the part where we talk about how Grail Country is not intellectually rigorous enough for me.
Jacob's just too smart.
No, I mean,
go ahead.
No, I mean this is one of my things with Nate and Luke. I don't think I do think they're too much into personalism and things like that, and willing to once you're talking about Christian anarchy and universalism, and yes, Shari, as much as I love you, I think I think universalism is a very dangerous idea. I think it's an incredibly dangerous idea.
Okay, I only saw like glimpses of that 24-hour live stream, which wasn't even 24 hours. It was 29 hours.
Correct.
So
Hey.
what's up with that?
We're one of these days we're gonna get down to like actually having my dream of 3 24/7 channels.
That's the dream.
That is the dream. That's what I actually proposed to Paul. I don't know how long ago that was. How long ago did I go visit Paul the first time?
This is not a touch grass moment.
It's not a what?
This is not a touch grass moment.
What is not a touch grass?
This.
Your 3 24/7 consecutive live streams.
Look,
like you're beaming the internet into your brain at that point. Like,
no, you don't understand. Like, it's not like I think anybody should watch the 3 channels simultaneously.
I don't care. That's still too much. That's like,
Andrew,
that's
look,
still
we'll
way
just
too
have
much.
like the few local addicts in the chat, you know, who will just constantly be watching those streams. That's all he'll do. And it's like, yep, there's that guy.
There will definitely be people who watch it. So I listened to that several times, and I forget. See, it didn't have Father Stephen's, if I remember correctly, it didn't have Father Stephen's speech, whole explanation of Nietzsche. So I wasn't really, like, I didn't hear anything new, so it wasn't so thrilling to me. I don't know. I guess I should go back and see if they released the video of Father Stephen's initial speech that Peterson started talking about.
You know what's funny is I was watching, like, it might have been on Just Chatting that Father Stephen joined, and he specifically mentioned that it was Peterson bait. And this was before, yeah, this is before like Peugeot announced that he was coming or anything. He was just like,
No,
this is total Peterson bait.
afterwards.
No, I don't think so.
No, he said he was. No, but I thought it was after.
No, I don't think so. I think
Maybe
I think he mentioned it was a Peterson bait, and then
it could be.
all of a
Yeah,
sudden
no,
Peugeot
he
enhanced.
definitely said he definitely was begrudgingly denying universalists. I'm pretty sure Father Stephen quite clearly denies universalism. Universalism is not anything you could possibly walk out of the, like, annihilationism, which is what Sam Tiedemann believes in, is kind of sort of what I believe. The fact is, the Talmud talks about people that hell will end and their punishment will not. And that's actually a step above annihilationism. So there are people who have a share in the world to come, but since they will be they will have a sense of regret for all of the things that they could have done better, like that sort of punishment, like, will be will be eternal. So there is a sense in which their they will. My brain will start working. Hell will end, and their punishment will not.
Uh-oh, you're getting called out.
How is this not woo-woo, Jacob? Do you hear yourself and you say Grail country is woo-woo? I mean, lol.
Got him.
Because I actually believe. Should I pull out note 4 again? Where's my halachic man? I think I put it away. Where is my halachic man? There's my halachic man. Because every once in a while we have to read note 4. You love me reading note 4. Jan God, have you heard note 4 before?
I haven't heard of this before.
You have not heard note 4 before?
I remember hearing up till half of it and then dozing off a little.
Did you listen to my discussion with Aaron?
Oh, no.
You didn't listen to my conversation with Aaron? That may have been one of the greatest discussions ever on my channel in my life.
What? I thought it was this one.
Okay. Note 4. Halachic man. This was written in 1944. Even though Kierkegaard disagreed with Hegel's philosophy from beginning to end and made it the object of his fierce, stinging attacks, he nevertheless accepted from him the dialectical principle, with many significant changes to be sure. And this concept of the dialectic, which he and Karl Barth introduced into the analysis of the unfolding of their religious consciousness, and this view concerning the antinomic, and apparently this is the Kantian antinomy, Aaron let me know, structure of religious experience, which was revised and refined by Rudolf Otto in his book, The Idea of the Holy, give the lie to the position that is prevalent nowadays in religious circles, whether in Protestant groups or in American Reform and Conservative Judaism, that the religious experience is of a very simple nature. That is, devoid of the spiritual tortuousness present in the secular cultural consciousness, of psychic upheavals, and of the pangs and torments that are inextricably connected with the development and refinement of man's spiritual personality. This popular ideology contends that the religious experience is tranquil and neatly ordered, tender and delicate. It is an enchanted stream for embittered souls, and still waters for troubled spirits. The person who comes in from the field weary, Genesis 25:29, from the battlefield and the campaigns of life, from the secular domain, which is filled with doubts and fears, contradictions and refutations, clings to religion as does a baby to its mother, and finds in her lap a shelter for his head, the nest of his forsaken prayers. H.N. Bialik, Sini Tachat Kenafech. And there is comforted for his disappointments and tribulations. This ideology is partially embedded in the most ancient strata of Christianity, partially rooted in modern pragmatic philosophy, but mainly it stems from practical utilitarian considerations. The advocates of religion wish to exploit the rebellious impulse against knowledge which surges from time to time in the soul of the man of culture, the yearning to be freed from the bonds of culture, that daughter of knowledge, which weighs heavy on man with its questions, doubts, and problems, and the desire to escape from the turbulence of life to a magical, still, and quiet island, and there to devote oneself to the ideal of naturalness and vitality. This Rousseauian ideology left its stamp on the entire Romantic movement, from the beginning of its growth until its final tragic manifestations in the consciousness of contemporary man. Therefore, the representatives of religious communities are inclined to portray religion in a wealth of colors that dazzle the eye, as a poetic Arcadia, a realm of simplicity, wholeness, and tranquility. Most of the sermons of revivalists are divided in equal measure between depicting the terrors of hellfire and describing the utopian tranquility that religion can bestow upon man. And that which appears in the sermons of these preachers in a primitive, garbled form, at times interwoven with a childish naivete and superficial belief, is refined and purified in the furnace of popular philosophy and theology, and becomes transformed into a universal religious ideology which proclaims, if you wish to acquire tranquility without paying the price of spiritual agonies, turn on to religion. If you wish to achieve a fine psychic equilibrium without having to first undergo a slow, gradual personal development, turn on to religion. And if you wish to achieve an instant spiritual wholeness and simplicity that need not be forged out of the struggles and torments of consciousness, turn on to religion. This is a very, very bitterly sarcastic exposition on a verse in Genesis. Get thee out of thy country, which is filled with anxiety and anguish and tension, and from thy birthplace, which is so frenzied, raging, and stormy, to the land which is enveloped by the stillness of peace and tranquility, to the Arcadia wherein religion reigns supreme. The leap from the secular world to the religious world could not be simpler and easier. There is no need for a process of transition with all its torments and upheavals. A person can acquire spiritual tranquility in a single moment. Typical of this attitude is the Christian Science movement. It would appear to me that there is no need to explain the self-evident falsity of this ideology. First, the entire romantic aspiration to escape from the domain of knowledge, the rebellion against the authority of objective scientific cognition, which has found its expression in the biologistic philosophy of Bergson and Nietzsche, Spengler, Clegg's, and their followers, and in the phenomenological, existential, and anti-scientific school of Heidegger and his coterie. And from the midst of which there arose in various forms the sanctification of vitality and intuition, the veneration of instinct, the desire for power, the glorification of the emotional, affective life, and the flowing, surging stream of subjectivity, the lavishing of extravagant praise on the Faustian type and the Dionysian personality, etc., have brought complete chaos and human depravity to the world. And let the events of the present era be proof. He's writing this in World War II. The individual who frees himself from the rational principle and who casts off the yoke of objective thought will in the end turn destructive and lay waste to the entire created order. Therefore, it is preferable that religion should ally itself with the forces of clear logical cognition, as uniquely exemplified in the scientific method, even though at times the two might clash with one another, rather than pledge its troth to be clouded mysterious ideologies that grope in the dark corners of existence, unaided by the shining light of objective knowledge, and believe that they have penetrated to the secret core of the world. And second, this ideology is intrinsically false and deceptive. That religious consciousness in the man's experience, which is most profound and most elevated, which penetrates to the very depths and ascends to the very heights, is not that simple and comfortable. On the contrary, it is exceptionally complex, rigorous, and tortuous. Where you find its complexity, there you find its greatness. The religious experience from beginning to end is antinomic and antithetic. The consciousness of homo religiosus flings bitter accusations against itself and immediately is filled with regret, judges its desires and yearnings with excessive severity, and at the same time steeps itself in them, casts derogatory aspersions on its own attributes, flails away at them, but also subjugates itself to them. It is in a condition of spiritual crisis, of psychic ascent and descent, of contradiction arising from affirmation and negation, self-abnegation and self-appreciation. The ideas of temporality and eternity, knowledge and choice, necessity and freedom, love and fear, the yearning for God and the flight from his glorious splendor, incredible, overbold daring, and an extreme sense of humility, transcendence and God's closeness, the profane and the holy, etc., etc., struggle within his religious consciousness, wrestle and grapple with each other. This one ascends and this descends, this falls and this rises. Religion is not, at the outset, a refuge of grace and mercy for the despondent and desperate, an enchanted stream for crushed spirits, but a raging, clamorous torrent of man's consciousness with all its crises, pangs, and torments. Yes, it is true that during the third Sabbath meal at dusk, as the day of rest declines and man's soul yearns for its creator and is afraid to depart from that realm of holiness whose name is Sabbath, into the dark and frightening secular work-a-day week, we sing the psalm, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters," Psalm 23, etc., etc. And we believe with our entire hearts in the words of the psalmist. However, the psalm only describes the ultimate destination of homo religiosus, not the path leading to that destination. For the path that eventually will lead to the green pastures and to the still waters is not the royal road, but a narrow, twisting footway that threads its course along the steep mountain slope, as the terrible abyss yawns at the traveler's feet. Many see the Lord passing by, and a great and strong wind rending mountains and shattering rocks, and after the wind an earthquake, and after the earthquake a fire. But only a few prove worthy of hearing the still small voice. 1 Kings 19, 11 through 12. Out of the straits have I called, O Lord. Psalm 118, 5. Out of the depths I have called unto thee, O Lord. Psalm 130, verse 1. Out of the straits of inner opposition and incongruities, spiritual doubts and uncertainties, out of the depths of a psyche rent with antinomies and contradictions, out of the bottomless pit of a soul that struggles with its own torments, I have called unto thee, O Lord. And when the Torah testifies that Israel in the end would repent out of anguish and agony, see Maimonides, Laws of Repentance 7:5. In your distress when all these things are come upon you, and you will return unto the Lord your God. Deuteronomy 4:30. It had in mind not only physical pain, but also spiritual suffering. The pangs of searching and groping, the tortures of spiritual crises, and exhausting treks of the pure soul purify and sanctify man, cleanse his thoughts and purge them of the husks of superficiality and the dross of vulgarity. Out of these torments, there emerges a new understanding of the world, a powerful spiritual enthusiasm that shakes the very foundations of man's existence. He arises from the agonies, purged and refined, possessed of a pure heart and a new spirit. It is a time of agony unto Jacob, but out of it shall he be saved. Jeremiah 30, verse 7. i.e., from out of the very midst of the agony itself, he will attain eternal salvation and redemption. The spiritual stature and countenance of the man of God are chiseled and formed by the pangs of redemption themselves.
It was perfect, Jacob. It solved all of our questions.
What did people say?
He's looking at the comments.
Wow, you guys were commenting a lot, weren't you? Okay, let's see. Where do we go? Where do we start?
It was beautiful. I enjoyed it.
It is one of the most beautiful things. I love this.
It was great. It was a great note.
This is great. I'm ready. No. Okay. This is like Chad, the alcoholic, reciting the lines from the AA guidebook. It is kind of. Or Sherry reading McDonald. Okay. We love the writings of people who have transformed our minds, people who shown their light. Very interested. Ooh, the note literally says, etc., my guy. Yes, it does. Can someone tell me why Jacob is reading this? Is this his refutation of woo? Yes, it is. The entire point is that religion is not Coke. This is true. It's a trance. Yeah, it kind of is. I feel bad for yeshiva students, not gonna lie. I hate to tell you this, but most yeshiva students never read Halachic Man. Unfortunately. Tragic. It is. You read the room.
I missed that one.
This is a note.
Yeah, like what?
It's a note. It's like, yeah. It's no. Actually, the book itself is a kind of biography, spiritual biography. So I was very surprised when Elijah decided he's like, hey, can we have a book club on your channel? I'm like, sure. And he decided he wanted to read Halachic Man. I'm like, so we did a book club on Halachic Man, and I was there just to translate. Like, I mean, I don't understand how you can actually understand this without a deep knowledge of Judaism, but we did a whole book club, and 5-6 people, none of whom were Jewish, were reading Halachic Man. It was the weirdest experience I've ever had in my life.
But was it a good experience?
What?
But was it a good experience? Okay, good.
Well, I hope it was for them, yeah. Listen up, folks. There will be a test later. I suspect the notion of Son of Man has always had a critical dismissive contingent under claims of woo, hence Enochic controversies. Not sure. No, you did not break Jacob. This may be the 5th time I've read the entirety of Note 4 on this channel.
Oh man, you know who has a great reading voice? Grim Grizz. There was one stream he read something from a book, and I was mesmerized by it. I could not stop listening to it. Grim Grizz, if you're watching this, you got to do more of it.
If you're gonna read Halachic Man, I do suggest reading. I do suggest listening to the book club, because I honestly don't understand how someone who's not an Orthodox Jew has the context to read Halachic Man. So, even though I wasn't reading it with the book club, I would show up to the book club just to explain the things and answer questions.
I was gonna say, some people read books to understand. Some people read books to then ask questions so they can understand.
I'm not calling you stupid. You just don't have the context for it. He starts talking about his great uncle. And if you don't know who his great uncle is, I'm not sure you have any idea what he's talking about. His great uncle is one of the greatest rabbis. If you don't know Jewish history, yeah. Hezi, oh no, Hezi shows up. I'm gonna have to go to bed. It's midnight.
What time is it now in Israel?
I think it's 8 a.m.
Okay.
Oh, I got a book.
Oh yeah, I've heard that's a good book.
We'll see how it goes. I like it so far.
Oh, it is 10 a.m. according to Hezi.
Aha.
So
I
that's
told Andrew's parents they should read that book. I don't think they
Mhm.
did.
I don't think they did either. They don't read much books.
Shari, you're like a $50 airplane ride away from Kazi. You could go say hi.
Wait, $50?
Yeah, flying from Europe to Israel is like cheaper than flying from Los Angeles to San Francisco.
Oh wait, hold on. Sherry lives in Europe? I thought she lived in Canada. Or...
No, she lives in Canada. She's in Germany right now.
Oh, okay. All right. I see.
Yeah. I don't know. What's a flight from Germany to Tel Aviv to Berlin? Google Flights. I think this is a round trip. $250.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Not as
Like,
cheap as I thought it was, but
like a round trip for a plane ticket, that's like pretty like just below average, I would say.
Yeah, it's probably like, well, if she wants to fly tomorrow, it's like $400.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Depends when you buy it.
and it depends when you go. Like flights to Israel are much cheaper when it's not. Oh, round trip in September, 100 and you could get round trip for like $200.
Actually, not trying to turn this into a political discussion or anything, but I was like looking into more like stuff about the history of Israel and Palestine, and I was looking into like the West Bank area and how there's been like this like settlement thing that is going on where like Israeli people have started to rapidly settle into the West Bank area, and it's like created tension. So like I guess it's like I don't know much about this. This is something I've kind of stumbled upon. You could correct me at anything. So what is the whole like thing with that? Or
Say that again?
like the rapid like settlement of Israelis in the West Bank.
What about it?
Oh, it's like I don't know. Like, what is the?
Oh yeah, I mean,
like
so
the history of it.
Here, let me show you one of my recent Twitter posts. This is something I posted today.
Oh.
Who do you think needs to change strategies, Israel or Palestine? I mean, honestly, like, oh, it wasn't Yoav. The chat was with T Grog. I haven't talked with Yoav yet. Hopefully he'll come on. But it's like, yeah, if the Palestinians like, dude, change strategies. What can I tell you? This strategy not working for you. But yeah, I mean, this is part of like what I am not happy about, which is that Israeli far right, who some of them are actually genocidal, are like, yeah, we're winning. Let's do this thing. And it's like, no, that's not good. But if they continue down this road, it's not going to be good. I'm not worried about Israel. I am worried about Israel, But like, that's because I believe like sins are bad. Yes, there was very good news in Israel yesterday, and that's part of why I ended up going into the whole thing of discussing, because like Hamas accounts were like crying. Lots of Hamas accounts were crying, but what can I say?
Okay.
Which
It's just.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look. Frankly, a lot of people, especially on the far right in Israel, were like, there was a meme people were posting. Israel rescued 4 hostages. Yeah, that's great. And they killed 150 people to do it. And the response was, I already said it was great. You don't have to sell me on it. I mean, yeah. It's like, yeah, I mean, look, I would very much like the Palestinians to put down their arms and realize this is not a good strategy for them.
But in all likelihood, that's probably not gonna.
Yep.
It's probably not gonna happen.
Yep. And more Palestinians are going to die.
I mean, from what I've seen, is that basically Israel is looking to basically completely occupy the Gaza Strip.
I don't think so. We're not right now, not yet. But when Israel, was it 2007, Israel vacated the Gaza Strip? I don't know what's going to happen.
Like it's like Israeli like businesses or something like that, or like when you say
It was called the disengagement. They actually went in and disassembled Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip.
Oh, okay.
It was a big deal. And it was just bad. Oh, come on, Jacob. You know that's the end game. You know it. Just own and try to make it palatable as possible. If you lie, it's worse for Israel. Yeah, I honestly don't think that's the end game. I think the vast majority of people would be so much happier if Gaza, if Egypt would take Gaza back, but they won't.
Wait, did Egypt own the Gaza Strip at one point?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah, Israel took it from them in 1967, was it? But Egypt doesn't want them back. That's part of the problem.
Right. Yep. Which I remember seeing somewhere in the news about that, how Egypt has been resisting some of the Palestinian refugees.
Yeah, no, I mean, people keep on talking about Gaza being an open-air prison, and it's like, if that's the case, what does that make the Egyptians? Because one of the borders is with Egypt.
Where it's like the borders are not completely surrounded by Israel.
Exactly.
It's like if ideally if they wanted to go from Egypt to Gaza, like for whatever reason, for business, whatnot. So anyway, yeah, I see your point there.
Egypt could open up that border if they wanted to. They don't want to.
Just bad relation with the Gaza Strip.
They're afraid of extremists from Gaza going into, like, there's 2 million people living in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them have been what do you call it? Radicalized. Yeah, this was. I mean, this. I think this was deliberate on Hamas's part. They went. I think they deliberately targeted left-wing people because they think that's the way to win, which is crazy. Technically, if Egypt allows the Palestinians to leave Gaza, they assist the Israelis in ethnic cleansing of Gaza. Egypt is afraid of getting sued for helping Israel with its plans. No, that's not what they're afraid of. And frankly, this is what I keep on saying. Call it ethnic cleansing, call it whatever you want. I think anybody who actually cares about the people in Gaza and the West Bank should be demanding that Jordan, Syria, and Egypt accept anybody who wants to leave. But they won't do that because they want those people as pawns. You can't claim you actually care whether these people live or die, and at the same time claim that they're living under a genocidal regime, and you refuse to help them leave. Like, how do these three things come together? You care if these people live and die. They are living under the genocidal regime, and you don't want them to leave that country. Like, square those three for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's play.
Okay.
Unless there was something you wanted to talk about.
No, it's just I just heard about the topic of the Jewish settlements of the West Bank, and I just wanted your take on it. So
I
it sounds like
I have family who live in settlements on the West Bank. I knew Kobe Mandel's father, who was a 13-year-old boy who was living in one of the settlements and was murdered by a group of people when he was with a friend of his. Like, I think it's crazy that people, including distant members of my family, are willing to risk their lives to try to conquer this land. I don't think it's religiously defensible at all. This is one of the things that I'm very against, as far as religious Zionism goes. But, like, yeah, the extreme right is growing in power in Israel. Yeah, conquer. They go and they build, like, yeah, just look at the settlements. Basically, yeah, that's how they view it, as conquering. They believe living in those settlements is helping conquer the land. That's what they believe, and that's why they go. There are people who, I have family members, distant family members, who live in settlements in Hebron, for example.
I mean, it's like, it is, because the more people you have in a place, it's like,
yeah, facts on the ground.
The more political power you have.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's precisely what this map is about. Like, that's where you see all the white stuff. That's the settlements. The white stuff in the thing. So the Abduls in the Levant are right in that they are being occupied by colonizers. Lol. Who knew the Abduls were right? I have no idea what you mean by Abduls, but they're the people who are living in the settlements are extreme by Israeli standards, and they're they're only becoming more and more extreme. And yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes, the Israeli right is becoming more and more extreme. What can I say?
Okay.
Okay, I am going to end the stream, even though there's like 8 people watching.
All right. Good night, folks.